And that's being reflected in the Chicago Board of Trade's grain trading futures prices. They're going through the roof, literally, up 200%, 300%, depending on which grain you're looking at and how far out. This past fall, Russia publicly announced they were not going to honor futures contracts for grains that had already been sold. Ukraine did the same thing. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that is not an act of war on one hand. On the other, it's about an inch away from an act of war. That's how serious not honoring grain futures contracts is. But they did the right thing. They kept them for their own people. The United States has been the most resilient to these problems in agriculture, but we're having our problems as well. Western Kansas is in eastern Colorado, extreme drought. Louisiana is having extreme drought. And there's isolated pockets all over North America having very difficult weather-related events.
Right. All right. Thank you, John.
Okay.
Thanks, John. Yeah, and I think the big freeze in Mexico is apparently going to push prices 400, 500% up.
Yeah, the only saving grace there, Jules, is Mexico doesn't have seasons typically. Usually, 365 days a year they can be growing fruits and vegetables with no winter. What happened it's been almost 2 months ago now, is a quite bizarre incident, but they will get fresh vegetables and fruits planted and be harvesting them in the next few weeks. It's just the nature of having a place that's almost warm. That's warm almost all the time, I should say. That freeze down there was a truly bizarre event, and they'll recover from that. But we're entering, and we started talking out in this conversation about phase 2. Agriculture is becoming very, very scary all over the planet. Growing grains, fruits, vegetables, whatever it is. Everything's at risk. Everything's on the table, and we will continue to see increasing prices for the foreseeable future.
Thank you, John. Chuck, you have a follow-up question?
Yes, sir. This is something that's always nagged on me, John, because there's been so much discrepancy about it. But I'm kind of curious about your opinion on it. Do you think the BP oil disaster was an intentional act to speed along world events?
Well, I live in the world of evidence, Chuck, and there's no evidence of that. The evidence we do have is that it was well known in those areas of expertise when it comes to drilling oil. It was well known in those areas of engineering that salt dome was risky business. That salt dome has been known for decades to be a massive, probably a century's worth of oil in that one salt dome. That's well known and has been well known for decades. It's also been well known that the pressures inside that salt dome are beyond our current technology, our current engineering to handle. Apparently what they were doing was attempting to drill at the edge of it, at the edge of the salt dome, thinking, well, maybe the pressure won't be quite so bad here, and we'll be able to contain it, and our great-great-grandchildren will be fabulously wealthy as well. Seriously, generational wealth. That's what they were looking at, getting their hands on. They took the risk, and of course they failed. I don't have evidence that it was intentional. I don't know. And something we hear about in the Patriot community frequently is, they want to declare martial law. They built FEMA camps to round up the Patriots and the conservatives and the Tea Party people, and they want to declare martial law. Well, martial law hurts them just like it hurts us. At some point they will declare martial law when they have no choice. Martial law disrupts daily commerce. The powers that be need FedEx and UPS and the mail service to get their spare parts to them just like you and I do. It's not a fun thing. It's not a good place to be. Obviously and clearly, when these events get bad enough, or there's a nuclear device goes off in a major city, or the economy gets so bad that there's rioting in the streets, of course they'll declare martial law. But I don't believe they'll do it before they need to.
See, that's what I kind of agree with you there, John. There's going to be more chaos than there will be order. Yeah. Well, I will hand you back to Jules. Thank you very much for that answer. I appreciate that.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thanks, Chuck. And hopefully they didn't bite off more than they can chew. Apparently there's a big methane bubble in the Gulf. The next question from Big Medicine.
Hello, Mr. Moore. I really appreciate taking your time out to speak with us tonight, and I also really appreciate all the work you do on your radio show.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Mr. Moore, what do you know about the synthetic microbes that were released in the Gulf of Mexico that were claimed to supposedly eat the oil, and what effects that's going to have on the ecosystem and, of course, people?
Well, I'll make a general observation. It's really a bit outside my expertise. Anytime you mess with Mother Nature, sometimes you get unintended consequences. Sometimes they're good unintended consequences. For example, since we're talking about preparedness, or at least we should be, there's a plant called kudzu, which if you drive through Georgia and some places down south, you can drive for miles and see this stuff covering hillsides. It's a parasitic plant from Asia. It's a vine that grows, and once it gets established, Roundup won't kill it. It's really tough stuff, but I found out last summer you can eat this stuff. It's a very nutritious, starchy food. A doctor friend of mine, she grew up in Hong Kong, and she told me she ate it almost every day as a child before they left China. So sometimes these events, these man-made or tampering with Mother Nature can really have a good consequence. The synthetic things that were released in the Gulf of Mexico, I'm not sure that anybody knows what the outcome's going to be. I'm not sure that there's enough microbes to eat up a foot deep of oil in the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico. It sounds like an awful large volume for these microbes to be chewing on. Maybe they multiply to the point where they can do that, and then what? Do they die off, or do they start eating on something else?
Indeed. I'm sure we won't see the effects for quite a while. Thank you so much, John, for that answer.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, John. And as you mentioned, foraging will be a very important skill to learn in the future. Lua, do you have a question for John?
Yes, I do have another one. John, mainstream media keeps on telling us that they're constantly reassuring the public that the Gulf Stream is still flowing in its usual pattern. What do you think can be done to make this information that it has stopped open and available to the public?
Well, it is available to the public. They don't know it exists. The U.S. Navy website is open to anybody who clicks onto it. People simply don't know about it or how to do it. I've got my reach. You've got your radio show you're doing here tonight. What we call Patriot Radio or alternative media reaches a fairly small percentage of people. There's Coast to Coast, which there's a lot of debate about the real motivations of Coast to Coast. I've talked to Professor McCanney about this at length. I think one of the things that they do on Coast to Coast is to take real scientific information like from Professor McCanney, and they mix it in with people being abducted by aliens to make it all seem like it's a real fantasy and nothing to pay attention to seriously. That may be the real agenda of Coast to Coast. But they have a huge audience. They have the largest nighttime audience in the country.
I suppose that you could sort of assume that the aliens are real, and then, you got the whole thing real, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, sure. Okay, how fast do you think climate changes will turn the northern part of the northern hemisphere into an ice block? Do you have any idea what kind of climate change would be expected in other parts of the planet? Because of the stoppage of the Gulf of Mexico. Right. I mean, the Gulf Stream is what I'm saying.
Right. I'll tell you what we know for sure, and then as I'm on the witness stand a lot, and I would ask the attorney, do you want my sworn speculation? We believe that what's happening right now is either the beginning of a mini ice age. A mini ice age could be 3 to 10 years, maybe as long as 5 or 6 decades, or a full-blown ice age, which could go on for many centuries. That appears to be the case. It'll be several years before even that's definite, at least for us non-scientists. We don't have access to the JPL secrets and NASA secrets. I recommend people watch the film The Day After Tomorrow, and they have the hero in there is a paleontologist who specializes in weather. There really are such men and women who study ancient weather in the hopes of gaining something that will help us figure out what's going to happen in the future. The work product of people like that is not open to the public. So what we're left with is observing what we can observe. Pipes freezing in Ireland in the ground because they're not buried deep enough. This winter was the worst in centuries. We'll be watching carefully the following one and so forth. Other things can and will take place before that as well. We're looking at a planetary-sized object coming deeper into our solar system, and that's going to change everything. The Gulf Stream stopping by itself is changing everything. It's such a major thing. Now, I wasn't aware of this is Lua, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay. I've got to keep track of the players here. I wasn't aware, Lua, that if the mainstream media was doing anything about the Gulf Stream, claiming it's operating or otherwise. Is that happening on the evening news?
It's happening in some of the mainstream media. Whenever there has been the claim that it has stopped, there have been these nice scholarly sounding, oh no, everything is fine, the Gulf Stream is running the way it's supposed to. I've seen it written 3 or 4 times.
Well, okay, I'm just going in through my head here what that means. The fact that they're even recognizing that it needs to be addressed tells me a lot.
It sure does.
Taking it seriously, they're not ignoring it. Too many people in high school and college science classes came to figure out what the Gulf Stream is and how important it is. They can't ignore something that big. And the outreach that people like myself and Professor McCanny and Dr. Zangari and Zangari doesn't have any outreach. He's a pretty private guy. Dr. Deagle. We reach out to the ones that we can, and word of mouth is sometimes one of the best ways to spread information like this. We've got these marvelous inventions like YouTube and the Internet to spread the word from person to person. And yes, we're reaching tens of thousands of people, but what's tens of thousands of people compared to 350 million? Not very many. Not very many.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Lua. Hopefully we can have the advantage of the Internet for a little while longer. Diane, you've got a question for John?
Yes, I do. And hello to you, John, and thank you for all the wonderful stuff that you're doing. What I want to know is, in another part of the world really, do you have any intel on what's happening in the Gulf of Aden with regards to the possibility of a portal being located there?
Explain what you mean by a portal.
As in, the only other word I could think of would be a Stargate, a place where people can go to other dimensions, other places.
Sure you
yes,
want to go down that rabbit hole? You want to go down that
yes,
rabbit
I
hole
do.
tonight?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Well, you need to watch. There's a book also, the Philadelphia Experiment. You need to watch the film or read the book, preferably both.
Very familiar with that. Yes.
Okay.